Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett with part 8 of who knows how many, though we're approaching the end for sure, of who knows how many 2019 astrology feels. Yeah, I presented the astrology of 2019 in a very short time frame for the San Francisco Astrological Society on January 6th of this year. And this is me utilizing the gazillion slides I put together to move through very quickly there, and utilizing those same images and charts and such to take our time and really feel into the power of the heavenly happenings in this year of 2019, if you're into that whole Gregorian trip. So you'll find parts 1 through 7 online. There's a playlist that has all of them at YouTube. We started with some calendar calisthenics, asking this thing of what is a year, and then have moved since from Pluto through Neptune, Uranus, Chiron, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and now we find our way to Moon and Sun. So themes that have come alive already are that this is a year to be here now. So much of astrology is looking forward to 2020, and I think this is an important thing to do, but only if we do it in such a way to inform this moment and choose to live our lives today. I'll get back to that. This is the year for working the dream. We'll really get back to that. A year of passion. So much fire, so much water, so much heart, so much Scorpio when we look at the cycles of Venus and the Mercury transit that will come at the end of the year. Passion, heart before chart, and a year of the swamp thing, this idea of embodiment, so much earth, you know, Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn, Uranus, who will return to Taurus, and so much water, Neptune and Pisces. Yeah. And the synodic cycles of Venus in Scorpio, of Mercury cycles that are water cycles this year, coming into the fields, coming into the heart, which is in the monkey suit, that embodiment, that down and in, not only focusing on the ascension, but making sure we don't run away from this plane in this earth, and really getting down in the mud and the muck and starting to shape that clay through our dreams of, you know, what it wants to be in this great year of 2020. And the lunar nodes really speak to the essence of the water and the earth this year, because the North Node in November of 2018 shifted from fire Leo to water Cancer, and the South Node from air Aquarius to earth Capricorn. So these are the dates on January 1st, 2019 and January 1st, 2020 for the true lunar nodes, the position of the true lunar nodes. North Node, tropical Cancer, South Node, tropical Capricorn. People ask me, should we use mean nodes or true nodes? You know, they both have a thing. I love to respond by saying I'm trying not to be mean, and I like to tell the truth. We have ephemerides for where these nodes actually are. Why not use that in the moment's time? The means to an averaging thing, which used to have to be done because we didn't have pure enough calculations, I think, to track them day by day. But the means people like also because they remove the direct motion of the lunar nodes. You may know that the lunar nodes transit the zodiac in a retrograde motion normally. Takes about 18.6 years for the nodes to get around the zodiac retrograde. But every time the moon comes to visit either node, she bumps the nodes forward. She bumps them direct for a short period of time, depending on where the sun is. And I'm getting too tech already. It's a fantastic thing to study, actually. But the nodes every now and then go directrograde, as I like to call it, because that direct motion for them is like a retrograde because they typically travel retrograde. And about 18.6 years around the zodiac, and therefore divide that by 12. They spend about a year and a half in every sign. And in this year, calendar year of 2019, the true lunar nodes will spend the entire year in North Node tropical Cancer, South Node tropical Capricorn. All right. I love teaching eclipse cosmology and eclipse astronomy to get to the eclipse astrology. I'm not going to do that here because there's so much to present. I am going to do that at NCGR in San Francisco. If you live in the Bay and you're hearing this before January 19th, I'm speaking on January 19th at NCGR. I think I have a slide to show that later. But check that out. You can find that at morethan.astrology.com/events. And also at morethan.astrology.com, folks will find my services page to book a session if you would like. Many of you have found the donate link there, and I just want to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude. Someone sent a very large donation a couple of days ago, and it's such a inspiration / confirmation that I'm doing my work, I guess. So thank you so much. Other ways that you can give back is simply to like this video wherever you're watching it, share it around, and leave a comment that really lifts the heart every time. All right, anyway, so on YouTube, you can find this playlist that's called Eclipse Shadow Play. And maybe just part 1 and part 2, which are eclipse cosmology. We get very hermetic there and explore eclipses and the spirit, soul, matter, symbolism of sun, moon, earth through sacred geometry. The part 2 is the astronomy of shadow play. That's something I really recommend checking out. The more you can get into what's happening with these celestial events in nature, the more their nature will inform you, the more that you make yourself a talisman and a space for the spirits of these great heavenly happenings to participate with you directly. You can see the rest of the videos of this playlist were devoted to the triple eclipse season that happened in the Northern Hemisphere summer of 2018. We're going to explore the events of the eclipses this year. Most importantly, with eclipses, ceremonialize them, celebrate them. You know, it doesn't take an astro genius to understand the very clear symbolism of eclipse being light from shadow, shadow going dark and being reborn. And it is very important to connect ourselves in our intentions, in our alignments. This is an image of an eclipse ceremony that I held with my friend Seeley and many powerful beings at Joshua Tree. It was maybe January 31st. Yeah, that would make sense, of 2018. And we had to stay up to the middle of the night to see this blood moon. And why I say it would make sense that it was January 31st, because the eclipses and the new moons and the full moons and the lunar phases in general tend to retrograde through the calendar and through the zodiac by 10 to 11 degrees each year. So what was January 31st will be January 20th or 21st. And this year it is January 20th. We have a total lunar eclipse. We're going to take a look at that. All right. So we'll take a look at all the eclipses this year. I will say that if you live in the Bay Area, reach out, because I'll be holding an eclipse chat and meditation and ceremony in San Anselmo on January 20th to watch this lunar eclipse, because unlike last year for the West Coast of the United States where I live, we don't have to stay up till 4 in the morning to see this blood moon. Today, or this week, this year, in January 20th, 2019, the total lunar eclipse in the 1st degree of Leo, the perfection happens around 9 p.m. So it's like really kind of ideal eclipse watching time if the clouds allow, and they will. Okay, so here are the eclipses of 2019. Check out that URL at the bottom of the page, moonblink.info/eclipse/search, one of my favorite places to play online, especially for eclipse research. You can just type in a year, 2018 to 2018, and see all the eclipses of 2018, of the year of your birth, 2019. You can type in specific days. You can do all sorts of things. All right. So calendar year, Gregorian 2019, these are all the eclipses that happen. All right. So we tend to shift between years of total solar and partial lunar and years of total lunar and partial solar. And that's a fantastic and beautiful study. I will say that it does not comply to the Gregorian calendar, but rather to the eclipse year. And I'm going more tech than I intend to. So let me just plant that seed for you. But you will see that this year we have this total lunar eclipse on January 20th. Times are Pacific on the left, by the way. But we also have a total solar eclipse on July 2nd, right? So there's a bit of both. And very interestingly, we have every type of solar eclipse in this calendar year. January 5th, a partial solar eclipse in Capricorn. July 2nd, a total solar eclipse. And December 25th, an annular solar eclipse, or the Ring of Fire. Well, you can also have a hybrid solar eclipse, which is part total and part annular. So that's not happening this year. But we get both of those things. So partial, total, and annular solar eclipses all happening in the calendar year of 2019. Obviously, if we were looking solstice to solstice, we would not have all these eclipses, right? Or equinox to equinox. So again, it comes down to what is a year and when do you start the thing. But as far as 2019 is concerned, and this kind of Gregorian thing that we seem to conform to, every type of solar eclipse this year. It's pretty amazing, I feel. I am recording this on January 13th, 2019. It's 8:32 a.m. in San Anselmo, California. And we are right in the midst of this eclipse cauldron. There was the partial solar eclipse in the sign of Capricorn on January 5th, 2019. So that was the new moon of this particular lunation, which will be answered by the full moon of this lunation on January 20th, a total lunar eclipse in the sign of Leo. I'm recording just about in between those two, right? 8 days after the 5th, 7 days before the 20th. What's that mean? Today is the first quarter moon, or the waxing half moon, or halfway between this partial solar eclipse and the coming total lunar eclipse. So I guess it's the right time to get to this part of the 2019 transmission. My words are still waking up, friends. Capricorn, and look at this, right? I'm going to use this triangle to show how this solar eclipse was just between Pluto at 21 degrees Capricorn and Saturn at about 12 degrees Capricorn, 15 and a half right in between the two. And, you know, we can stretch that triangle out and show all of this Earth and all of this Capricorn, Mercury in the first degrees of Capricorn, Saturn, Moon, Sun for the solar eclipse, because they're close enough to a node, South Node, 27th degree Capricorn, in between there and the eclipse Pluto, who's been in Capricorn for some time. So this is a significantly Capricorn chart, right? I mean, as we begin January 1st, we begin every year in the sign of Capricorn, not when Capricorn begins, interestingly. Obviously, that would be beginning our years at the December solstice. And in part one of this series, I've contemplated that probably too much already. But we begin every year in Capricorn, you know, and for the Northern Hemisphere, this kind of complies with the idea of beginning our days in the middle of the night, in the darkness, you know, but that is when the sun is born at December solstice, when days begin overcoming nights. Now, that's only speaking for half the globe, right? What we can say for the entire globe is that the December solstice is when the sun, after moving south for 6 months, now moves north once again. And we can see this on our horizons. And there's something very important about, if we know the truth that the Earth is actually moving towards the north through space because the sun is, that as the sun in our view or our relative perspective is also moving north, which happens for 6 months of the year, this really is that Capricorn goat climbing this mountain, like moving us towards the future. It's a very interesting conundrum when we also consider the south lunar node, which we also share Typically, it's something that is about the past. And I'll get into that as we look at some of the significant aspects of 2019 in the future video, because we will have Saturn in the South Node coming together, Pluto in the South Node coming together. And this is a huge bit of our ancestry and our remembrance and perhaps past lives, if that's of your cosmology. In the South Node, eclipse always invokes this. And I will say also that Capricorn has so much of this in it, because Capricorn really is the elders and the roots of the world tree that is drinking from the deep waters, the organic structures, the traditions of earth we must preserve for the 7 future generations. When Capricorn is done right, when we take back the true earth-based, grounded nature, feminine, we can say, nature of the Capricorn mysteries, and we tune into, and I love this transmission from Daniel Jamario and Kaylin Castell of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, that Capricorn is the council of grandmothers. But is that what your astrology books say, where we read government and police and, so much patriarchal transmission? So every time we Capricorn, when we have times to remember Capricorn South Node and restructure Capricorn Saturn and evolve Capricorn Pluto and bring our consciousness to Capricorn Mercury, or our mind to Capricorn, and reset the image of Capricorn by sending it into shadow so a new light can be born out of there, which in a sense is an essence of every December solstice. But when you have a solar eclipse happening near that point and very close to the New Year's that most of us celebrate, and also close to Epiphany, which is to me very interesting. And I spoke about that some in the first part of this transmission, but there is so much intent to come back into the Capricorn. Remember that part of the dream as well. We can see this eclipse is sextile with Neptune, which I don't show here. First, I'm showing this. Uranus, who's very strongly square the nodal axis at the time of this eclipse. All right, so Uranus wants change. Uranus, who came into Earth Taurus in retrograde and went back into Aries in November of 2018, the same exact day, November 6, 2018, that the nodes shifted from Leo Aquarius to Cancer Capricorn. Uranus went back into Aries, and he's squaring these nodes, telling us how important it is for us to transform this idea of what the axis called Cancer Capricorn is. So evolutionary astrologers many in the Jeffrey Wolf school anyway, would consider Jeffrey Wolf Green school would consider this to be a skip step on the evolutionary path. That's not my astrology necessarily, but many ways to pet the cosmic cat. And I mention it here because I think it's important that planets at the lunar bendings, and Uranus here at the south lunar bending, if you know that term, square to the nodes and zodiacally ahead of the south node where the moon reaches its furthest southern expression, the northern hemisphere that's closest to Earth. Uranus is that place. It's a very kind of Capricorn energy in and of itself. Uranus is in that place, kind of stimulating a revolution and a shift around the way that we do Capricorn. And I think he's going back in Aries to really speak about the necessity of the pioneering way, the warrior way, and remember what has happened. Remember what's come from. Remember why we need to shift. So in the earlier transmission, I think part 2 of this thing, maybe part 3, I spoke about the Fukushima event when Uranus came into Aries. And I think looking back to some of these, things that are so hard for us to look at because we feel like giving up when we do, and understanding that, we need to face those pains and go into that place until we unwrap the gift in that terrible wrapping and understand that it is another reminder for us to have, in the words of Terence McKenna, an archaic revival. So much about the true Capricorn is there. I want to show this very strong inconjunct or quincunx between this passionate Scorpio Venus in her last days of Scorpio with Uranus in its last months of Aries, and these two signs traditionally associated with Mars. And you can see Mars there in Aries squaring Mercury. All right, so my story is not complying with the way I set up the highlights of the aspects of this partial solar eclipse chart, the cauldron in which we are in. What I'm showing here is that while Uranus is square the nodes and there's some tension for the sake of awakening and shifting, because Uranus is quincunx Venus, that means Venus is sextile and trine the nodes. In this case, Scorpio Venus sextile, the Capricorn South Node trine the Cancer North Node. And she is showing us that it is that passion, that it is that art of the heart that is going into an amazing mechanism that connects us in our fields to the all that will help us reclaim our connection to the ancestors and to the wisdom of the earth. So Uranus will stimulate this, and that doesn't always look pretty, you know. And how has it been for you this last week, friends? But Venus says where the work is to go into the power and the passion of the loving art of the heart, you know, and that commitment to open our hearts to celebrate rebirth through our love of one another and our connection. All right. So here is that Mercury square Mars, applying strong with Venus and Uranus, the traditional domiciles of Mars, and in their own connection to the nodes. This fascinates me. And Mercury, you know, that mind now in Capricorn, really speaking, I think, of the archaic revival, coming up to square Mars, who says it has to happen now in Aries, you know. But he doesn't say that if we're balanced and we're doing the dream work and grounded in the Capricorn place. And there's so much more to say about that. I love that Mars, not too strongly aligned here, but applying to a trine with Jupiter, which happens in the month of this eclipse cycle, right? Or this eclipse cauldron. That there's something about, this is the spiritual thing. There is the spiritual warrior here. And I said this probably in the last video, maybe a couple ones ago, that I have found that the true role of the spiritual warrior is not to run around shaking people awake, but rather keep the fire warm so the dreamers can sleep and awaken at their own pace. Because when we shake somebody awake, when the alarm clock rings, we lose the dream. But if we can keep the fire warm and honor that the dreamer is the one who is receiving the revelation to bring us the vision that will set us free, we understand to release that anxious reaction called urgency, and to breathe and ground and take a better look so that we can be the stones that have time now in our stillness to receive that vision. We are the awakening ones. We are the sleeping ones. I'll speak about how this theme to me is the most important image of 2019, maybe of the human experience, but it's really coming alive this year. And in so many ways is spoken to us by Jupiter and Saturn and Tisha. I'm coming to that at the end, though I will say now that my dear friend Gary Caton and I had a long conversation about that has been recently posted to his YouTube channel. So check it out. Gary Caton, C-A-T-O-N, Gemini Brett, Jupiter, Saturn. Searching that online, I'm sure will get you there. All right. So, you know, the mind of like coming back into the organic and that, you know, Martian force of the warrior way could really cause issues. And it can cause issues here about individuation versus tradition and culture. I wonder if that's shown up for you at all. I think we'll see how that perspective helps us honor what the invitations of the total lunar eclipse, that is the full moon of this lunation, might speak to us. And it looks like the sun is coming out of the eclipse behind this fireplace as I'm speaking. That's fun. All right, Jupiter square Neptune. Certainly a significant theme of this year. It's a test of faith. And it's an invitation to find faith for the first time, to seek, go into the darkness. I spoke about this some recently. I certainly spoke about it in the interview with Gary, and I will speak about it in future transmissions. Fire and water can be friends after all. And I think I've said enough about that because we do need to move on. I have a session soon, so I want to cruise through. I'm not going to do this for each of the eclipses. In this particular 2019 astrology transmission, I will show you all of the eclipse charts. But here we are, you know, probably later this year, I'll get more detailed about all of the eclipses as they come round. All right, so very importantly, we see this nodal connection, right, with a new moon, because that's when eclipses happen. So, you know, a brief telling of the astronomy, right, of eclipses. So you see new moon there is 11 degrees, 18 minutes from K2. This is the Jyotish, or, you know, Vedic word for the south lunar node, the dragon's tail, we say, usually in the Western way, right? So 11 degrees and 18 minutes from the dragon's tail. Why are they called dragons? Why so much serpent symbolism with moon and sun in the alchemical and traditions of so many, you know, wisdom traditions of the world? Snake, serpent, including the dragon's head, north node, the dragon's tail, south node, Rahu, Ketu, respectively. Well, if this is the path of sun as seen from Earth, which is the plane of the Earth-Sun experience, or orbit, it's called the ecliptic. Every month, because the moon is not on that same plane, every month we see the moon snake above and below the plane of the sun, the ecliptic. And the ascending node brings the moon up towards the heavens and the descending node down to Earth. For the north hemisphere, the ascending node is the north node. The descending node is the south node. The south hemisphere, that is reversed. But either way, because the Earth is moving north, and this is a very real thing, yeah. The north node, whether you live in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, brings the moon or any planet crossing its north node, brings that planet towards, literally towards the future, where the south node brings it back to somewhere we have been. And that's a really, really dynamically important consideration. Hold on a second, because I'm changing times with a student I'm about to work with to later in the day, and I think that will be cool, because I'd like to flow a little bit more here with you right now. I believe so, period. Is visiting and might stay for another hour after that, comma, but I think it will be perfect, period. I will check in a little bit later, period. Sorry. Right. So look at this image here, and you see that moon and sun. And I'm just going to do one more thing. I have a little more time. I'll be right back, friends. Some saxophones for you. And back from the eclipse. I love that this is happening right now on the camera. Cool. Let's do a little bit of that for a second. Oh, cool. That was just a camera effect. I was going to say the sun's over there, but somehow it seemed to be bouncing around. But it's because the video was reversed. Oh, I mean, what a powerful thing for the sun that brings us light. To be eclipsed, to be occulted, to be hidden by the moon. And just to speak a little bit on the cosmological tip, and I hope you'll go check out that Cosmology of Shadow Play video that's up on YouTube. For me, and we symbolize sun with circle and say that this is the circle of spirit, and that the moon is soul, which is the crescent, to form with two circles. And when the solar eclipse happens, we get to see a couple of things, that soul and spirit are the same size. And by that, I mean you are not some division of the one thing, the all, but rather an entire reflection of it. These are the teachings of the moon. And for me, more importantly, the incarnational function of the moon, which is to reflect the one thing, spirit, into an absolutely unique expression, so that you can have an individuated experience here on earth matter. sun, spirit, moon, soul, earth, matter. That moon's other great art is the art of forgetting, which is necessary, because if you remembered what you truly were, you would never do you here on earth. And you are the one thing, and you are your one thing. And it's important for us to know both of those, you know, because as we commit to our own individuated experience and choose this awakening, rising process through our feeling, we find healing, which leads to knowing, which is the gift of growing in our world, which is the way that the one thing itself can grow. It cannot grow without you. Yeah? It cannot grow without us, I should say. The unity consciousness, which in many ways is a goal, it's also completely boring, friends, because the one is everything. Therefore, it's nothing. It cannot be aware of itself. So this great miracle was performed that looks like you, right? And the more that we commit to our own soul growth on a personal, individuated, or at least a parent individuated level, the more that we are giving growth to the one thing, which inherently cannot grow by itself because it is everything. And there's no way to express these things in words that make sense. That's the best that I will do in short for now. Much better way to learn and anchor in these truths, is not through words. We are not allowed to speak about the mysteries because, frankly, they're unspeakable, but through images. And that's why all my students draw, okay? This, and you know, this kind of thing. that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about in these great eclipses, sun, spirit, and moon, soul. And suddenly we find in the moment of especially a total solar eclipse, that they are the same size, but that soul is closer to home, closer to matter. This, I believe, is one of the reasons why we were told not to watch an eclipse, not only by the people who will say you will burn your eyeballs out, I mean by the astrologers who say you will be, you know, possessed and all of these things. And the truth is, actually, well, maybe the truth is, some of that stuff could happen. So we want to come in a grounded way. These are the teachings of Capricorn. And also in a way where we, as I stated when speaking about the Mars-Leo cycle we're currently in and before, where we are full of ourselves, where we know who we are on an individuated level, that we honor the truth that I'm here to do a Brett and you're here to do you, and love that and have passion for that, because then we don't have any available room. There's no vacancy in the personal monkey suit, you know? And to come to the eclipse in that way, to bring the gift of you to this great miracle of the sky, this great love-making of sun and moon, of spirit and soul. I mean, these are one of the greatest experiences we can have to truly receive the vision of the mystery. All right, let's get back to slides before I take us on a journey we can't come back from. Fine. So, nodes. If we look to the right of this beautiful image created by the beautiful Anna Zaharia with me, Arts of the Chart, you can see our logo in the bottom right. You're welcome to use this image. You could take a screenshot if you'd like. Here, I'll even turn off my camera once again so you can do that if you'd like. This would be the right time to take a screenshot, because this is actually a really good table that I had a very hard time tracking down the information for. And just that image below, created with Anna, gives us an image of the lunar nodes on a pretty basic level from a geocentric or Earth-centered point of view. And we are living a geocentric reality, friends. I'm not saying that the Earth does not orbit the sun. I'm saying that we live on Earth. And so our experience is the sun moving through the zodiac, which actually emanates from the heart of our planet. So if you choose to reuse this image, astrologers, please leave that logo on the bottom right. And if you ever see that logo and you choose to use the image that it accompanies, please leave that. Anna and I work very hard on these things to bring the astrological information back into the astronomical imagery. That's one of the intents of the art of the chart, and we would very much appreciate it if you credit us in this way, but at least leaving our logo for Gemini Brett and Scorpiana intact. All right, enough said. So here, if you look to the right, you can see the moon and the sun together, right? That would be a new moon. But you can see that it would not be an eclipse. I mean, it is only twice a year when we have opportunities for a solar or lunar eclipse. And those times every year are when the sun is close to either the north or the south lunar node. All right. The eclipse year, well, you know what? I'll leave that for another time. Because the nodes retrograde through the zodiac, the eclipse year, sun from, say, north node back to north node, is shorter than the tropical year of 365.242199 days and change. Does that make sense? All right. So this new moon that we're looking at in a diagram, from the northern hemisphere's point of view, the moon is above the sun. From the southern hemisphere's point of view, the moon is below the sun or close to the earth. Either way, no shadow, no eclipse for you, because the moon here is not occulting the sun. It's not eclipsing the sun, right? It's just blinded by the light of the sun. But don't we sometimes have our greatest visions with our eyes closed? So every new moon, we should plant seeds of intentions to really connect to the beauty and the energetic of that cycle, yes? And that seed will sprout with the first quarter. That's the waxing half moon, and flower with the full moon, if you're willing to address the tensions that arise in the second week to the intentions you set. Now you can meditate upon them and choose some shift in the full moon, which rises at sunset and really, you know, what is the right word? Shines throughout the course of the night, culminating in the middle of the night, and is so bright and so big, you know. It's a time of this illumination. It's a time where we can come into a higher vision and a higher reflection, the greatest reflection. It is that flower of that cycle. And if that flower chooses to be pollinated, which comes through mindfulness, which comes through an understanding of the tensions to the intentions we set, and why those tensions actually are just showing us that our intentions are built upon perceptions that must shift if we choose to find a way that is greater aligned to the flow of the all, you see. And so by the third quarter moon, if the flower chooses to be pollinated, the fruit grows, the fruit of wisdom. And there is tension here because we are at a place where we can run around showing off our fruit, or we can do what we're meant to with it, which is to eat the fruit and drop the core so it can compost for those seeds within the fruit, which are the seeds for the cycle ahead, right? Astrology is not a line. It's not even a circle. It's a spiral, right? And we always move, and this is a wonderful study in the lunations, we always move from cycle to cycle to cycle to cycle, right? It's not like a line with these marks on it. It's this spiral. You never step in the same river twice. As I've said a couple of times today already, the earth is literally moving through space with the sun and our other friends of our solar system. It's moving, not exactly, but towards Earth North. It's moving towards the star of Vega, a northern star, and away from the star of Sirius, a southern star. And in that northern motion, even if the moon's in the exact same degree of the zodiac, well, that's in a different place of the universe, you see, or of space, of the galaxy. So this spiraling energy, it just encourages us. I don't really have the words for it, I guess, but what I'm encouraging here is that when you bring your intentions from one Capricorn cycle, you know, like the one that we're in now, understand that those seeds that you are sprouting and flowering and fruiting will now birth seeds that you are to plant in the soil of the Aquarius cycle, whose soil is receiving the nutrients of the fruit also of the current cycle of which we are in. All right. Yeah, let's leave that there for now. So imagine if this moon and sun were meeting later in the year, about 3 months later, where the sun is now at that south node, which is here, by the way. That is the south node symbol. And where do we find that symbol but on the back of the snake's head? Do I have an image of that here? No. All right. So the back of the king cobra's head is that symbol that we use for the south node, because again, if this is the path of the sun as seen from Earth, every month the moon is snaking above and below that path. You can put the south and north node together and you will see that snaking motion where they are the crescent and the circles of spirit, because the crescent moon soul is arcing above and below, snaking above and below through that path of spirit, the ecliptic, where the sun lives, okay? So a few months from here, in the time of this image, the sun will be at the south node, and then when the moon comes around, because they are meeting for a new moon near their crossing points, right? I think of sun as spirit and the ecliptic as the circle of spirit, and moon as soul, and moon's path as the circle of soul. And they cross in these 2 points, the lunar nodes, right? So the south node is where the moon crosses the sun's path heading south, and that's literally towards our past, because the earth and the sun are moving north. And the north node is where the moon crosses the sun's path, moving north and moving in a sense towards the future. So this south node eclipse cycle that we're currently in is a cycle of reconnecting again to our ancestry, to our heritage, to our past, to the wisdom of the earth and the way that we've been. It's a time of remembrance. I spoke briefly about Atlantis before, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far right now, but I will say that what we are told happened on Earth is not what happened on Earth. And this is a time, this is another image of what's happening now for all of us, including very scientifically and in the outer world, like a great crater in Greenland that shows the comet that struck Earth 12,000 years ago, for example. More information coming out about solar cycles, which have contributed to the strange things that we have been through. And it is a time where on a soul level, we are starting to remember some of the things we have not been able to because of our catastrophobia and the pain of the death of our species, the very near extinction of our species. All right, so now I'm going super crazy, right? Crazy enough to take a second to share this, to share this transmission to my Arts of the Chart page on Facebook, which I hope you'll head over to and give a like to. And I hope you'll also share this video around and give it a like if you do like it, and leave a comment. That really helps spread the word, right? So this eclipse itself, it seems it's speaking through me at this time in such a way that I'm meant to get a little more woo. You'll hear me say later in these transmissions, I think, as I've set my intention for 2019, I want to return to some of my woo. My sister gave me this incredible crystal for Christmas, crystal mist, and it's misty, see? And it's been on my tea table for all of my sessions recently. I'm like seeing visions in it and things that like my cynical skeptic mind wants to deny. And I think I do a lot of that astrologically too. And as a being, I think it's very healthy to have a grounded approach here, and even a cautious approach. But this is a year where I've decided I need to release a lot of that. I think I'll speak more about that in future transmissions. But why I share that now is because I have been having these visions in a sense. I don't want to, but I've been having so many visions that help confirm why so much of my interest have been about the cycles of catastrophe, and why I listen to so much Randall Carlson, who I highly recommend, a rogue geologist, and have always been interested in ancient civilization and sacred sites and these things, because they're reminders of a greater way. The archaic revival, it's not just to get back to a more organic lifestyle. Yeah, we had not too long ago, like I grew up when there was no internet, right? I mean, my parents grew up in early youth when there was no TV. We don't have to go that far back to a point when there was no electricity. And, you know, and so a lot of these things are very brilliant, and it depends on how we are in relationship, yes, to the technological. The South Node in Aquarius, which has been happening for the last year and a half, it's about that. And now with the South Node in Capricorn, we remember to connect to our organic roots. But what I feel, and it's confirmed for me by so much of the astrology of this year and coming forward, is that we are being given an opportunity to connect to some of our true history in history, high story, and our true low story from the depths of our being as a culture, as a species. And we're really starting to feel again in our lives, and some of us will be seeing in our lives the times of ancient near total destruction, and to be encouraged by that and inspired by that, not drowned by that, because as we've suppressed this and we were forced to, there was the only way we could survive. We were a much more telepathic species when this went down. I'll share. Let me just hold the woo crystal. As long as I'm going here, we were a much more telepathic species when this great pain happened, and therefore it was even more painful. We lost a lot of that in the process. We lost a lot of that also in the pain of who we had to become simply to survive an ice age. And then we lost a lot of that through inquisitions, I should say. And not all of it is gone. And we are starting to remember some of these faculties, and we will remember them more and more as we feel into our own pains and that which we have suppressed. Now, we are not all meant to remember past lives in Atlantis and that. No, it's just coming back into in our own lives the pains that we have suppressed, you know, in our youth, etc., through the commandments of our crazy culture. And as I've shared before, with the strength of the Scorpio-Venus cycle and Mercury's retrogrades and the water signs and the Mercury transit in Scorpio to come, and this passion flower and this arch of the heart. Well, part of that arch of the heart is coming into what I feel is high Scorpio alchemy, which is to stop the serving the suppressed to control me and learning to control the expressed to serve me. And so as I come back into the power of my depths and my feelings and my own pains and shames and guilt and my own pleasures and love and sensuality, etc., I am allowing these waters to flow that have been so damned through the pain, not only of a lived experience, but of the suppressed history of our species, which was very truthfully necessary and sadly remains that way for most, but not for you. And I will say, you know, in this feeling of the battle of technology versus nature, which is also meant to shift, we will find things like the truth that we are being reminded of our innate organic technology and facilities, like our telepathic psychic connections, through outward technologies like email. All right. What? Yeah, so let's go back. I don't know how that all came out of this, but okay. Play. Okay, so look at this new moon, 15.5 degrees Capricorn, and the node at the time, 26.5 degrees Capricorn. And so 11 degrees separation, more accurately 11 degrees, 18 minutes. And so I'll show you here on the eclipse limit chart that this eclipse, and you can see the sun crescent, amazing, is a partial solar eclipse because it falls within that range of 11 degrees and 15 minutes to 15 degrees 21 minutes of the new moon separated from the node. So it's very close to the potential of a total solar eclipse, and this one itself would not be total if it was close enough anyway, but rather partial. And even closer to the nodes, it would be annular. And I think we'll unpack a little bit of that astronomy as we move along. This is where this eclipse is seen on Earth. All right. Yeah, you know, and I don't want to overteach this stuff because, again, there is a long astronomy of shadow play video you can find on YouTube. Just search Gemini Brett Eclipse Astronomy, will probably get you right there. But it's important to know that as the moon is crossing in front of the sun, very big, right? Well, for us, apparently the moon and the sun are the same size. In reality, right, this is a tiny little thing crossing in front of the projector, and so it does not eclipse the entire screen. And so you have to be in a special place on Earth to experience the path of the eclipse, and this is where this one is, right? It shows a little bit of Japan, I think the Philippines, it looks like. Well, no. Anyway, my own geography is not that great, especially when looked on a globe like this. And the strongest of the eclipses, like north of Japan, up in kind of the Siberia zone, it looks like to me. And it already happened, y'all. So this is the chart for Berkeley, where I was at the time of the eclipse. And I just want to show that the solar eclipse was below the horizon there on the right in the sixth house, because the line, the horizontal line on our quadrant chart wheels is the ground, right? So this is where the sun sets. I mean, you can tell that by 5:30 p.m. and January 5th anyway. So no solar eclipse for you if the sun is already set, right? All right, but that doesn't, and it does not mean that you will experience a solar eclipse if the sun is above the horizon, again, because we have a little thing, moon, blocking out a gigantic thing, sun, so it does not provide shadow on the entire screen, Earth, right? So this, again, is where that solar eclipse was visible. Where eclipses are is a wonderful and powerful and important study. You know, there's a wonderful book by Bill Meridian, who studied with some of the eclipse masters, Charles Jane and Landro. I'm forgetting names. I apologize. But check out Bill Meridian's Eclipse Path book. The Predictive Power of Eclipse Paths, I think, is the title of the book. It's a really cool book. If you are an astrologer, highly, highly recommended. You can also find a presentation on this, I know for sure, at the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. I'm a happy agent 1123, and Bill Meridian, also an agent of Cosmic Intelligence. So cosmicintelligenceagency.com, go to the webinars link, and I think you can find a presentation by Bill Meridian about the predictive power of eclipse path there. A fascinating study. All right. So here we'll look at this Leo total lunar eclipse that's coming in about a week from where I sit right now. First degree of Leo. All right, so this is an important thing because the eclipses do not need to be right with the nodes, right? They need to be near the nodes. The sun needs to be near the nodes at the time of a new moon for a solar eclipse, moon blocking the light of the sun, soul occulting spirit from the point of view of matter, or for a lunar eclipse, right? The blood moon, where we see the shadow of matter, earth, occulting the reflection of spirit by soul, moon, and it turns blood red, and it reminds us of the necessity to incarnate into a body with blood pumping through its veins to experience these dynamic understandings, or at least witnesses of these sacred marriages of soul and spirit. And you can see a symbol in the time of the total solar eclipse of that sacred marriage, which is the diamond ring in the sky. All right, so January 20th, about 9 p.m. Pacific, and here's the chart. This is a zero Aries chart, more of a global perspective that will just show that here this lunar eclipse, right, which means a full moon close to the lunar nodes in the first degree of Leo. So this is very important, right, because the nodes have spent their last year and a half from May of 2017 until November of 2018, they were in the signs of North Node Tropical Leo, South Node Tropical Aquarius. And because the nodes are the crossing points of the paths of spirit and soul, sun and moon, that's where the eclipses will happen. Now, we were talking earlier about planting seeds of intention for new moons, all right? And we'll speak in just a second about what a supermoon is from, you know, the way we describe or use that term today. But we can also use it just to say that the solar eclipse is kind of like the supermoon or like the super intentional soil for 6 months to come. Because as it is true that we will not have eclipses unless the sun is close to a lunar node, because that brings the new moons and the full moons close to the nodes. It takes about half a year for the sun to travel from the south node to the north node, or the north node to the south node. Again, it's a little bit shorter because the nodes themselves move retrograde, and they kind of anticipate that next meeting or that next eclipse season. So there's a wonderful study of how long do eclipses last for. Some say it depends on, energetically, astrologically, is it days, is it months, is it years? And many will say this has to do with how long astronomically the actual eclipse was or is or will be. But one thing we can say for sure is like there's only these eclipse seasons every half a year. And I find the time when the sun is at the bendings, and that's halfway between the nodes, that's kind of the time when the energy of the previous eclipse cauldron, when that baton is passed to the one that will come in about 3 months from then, right? There's many ways to pet the cosmic cat. That's not the only way I consider the energetic of eclipses, especially for impersonal readings. But I'll just say that this Capricorn solar eclipse cycle that we're in currently, in a way, it's setting the energetic for 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe longer for the year ahead, right? Capricorn, Cancer, because the nodes there really bring us into this place where in all times at the lunar nodes, though they are not visible, that is the crossing from matter, earth, of the circles of spirit, sun, and soul, moon. So this is this great alignment of the 3 parts of the philosophy, as Hermes described, what I believe Hermes was describing in the Emerald Tablets. And it's really what this world is all about. We say the Holy Trinity in astrology is sun, moon, and rising. Well, the rising is symbolic of earth because it tells you where you were born on earth, okay? So sun, moon, and rising is sun, moon, earth. And these nodes are sun, moon, earth. This is one of the reasons why they're so important in like a soul-based astrological delineation for us to help understand how our specific roles in earth are helping us through understanding our particular reflection of the one thing as a soul are coming to spirit. All right. So with the node shifting signs, we really shift that focus now to the Capricorn Cancer axis, right? So Capricorn, the elders, the traditions, the kind of righteous, in its right place, the tradition keepers that will preserve earth for the 7 future generations. And Cancer, the nurturing energy of mother. In a way, Capricorn, grandmother, grandfather, Cancer, mother, father. Right? The very different energies. Mom is scared about the kid. Grandma's like seen it all and understands they will survive. And so instead of like overprotecting, they'll just whisper a little fortune cookie wisdom and see how the young whippersnapper deals with it. Because when we overprotect, we not only take the opportunity for the child to experience their own life, but we also lose our own ability to experience their teachings that will happen when they go through their things, which are inevitable. Yeah. Capricorn, Cancer, often related to a nation, Capricorn, and its people, Cancer. From a mundane perspective, that's not the principle of my study, so I should probably stop there. Capricorn, traditionally associated with Saturn and the slowest moving of the visible lights, and Cancer with Moon, the fastest moving of the visible lights. If you play with secondary progressions, you'll know that a lunation there, because on average a lunation is 29 and a half days, through secondary progression where we relate the day to the year, because this cycle and this cycle are committed to the same essence in cycle of yin and yang. 29 and a half days lunation in this time frame through the fractal correlation of day to year. Secondary progressed lunation is 29 and a half years. Well, that happens to be the same length of time as a Saturn transit. Okay, so the Capricorn Cancer axis through these Saturn moon correlations actually also speaks to us of the dynamic power of time. Now, Cancer is where the waves are coming to the earth. It is the shore. It's really the surface of the waters where the light strikes and life is born. Yeah, but as we are told, and this may or may not be so, I think so, that we evolved out of the water. I mean, think about the importance of that surf, you know, and that transitional energy where sometimes the beach is underwater and sometimes it's of the earth. And these crabs who walk sideways, just like the sun at the solstices, and just like the waves, you know, really speak to that transformational energy. And the crab can change shells, some of them anyway, which is an important thing because we are being asked in eclipses, we are being invited in a sense to change shells. And one thing that we're being asked, I think, in this particular cycle is to look at the shell that is formed in our perceptions of what leadership is. And the reason why I say that is because Capricorn, where the partial solar eclipse, the new moon, was elders, wisdom keepers, and Leo, where the total lunar eclipse, the full moon of the cycle, is royalty. The two shapes of these endless archetypes of both of these great mystery schools, Capricorn and Leo. Capricorn I love to call leaders when we need them. It is the middle of the night. For the Northern Hemisphere, it is the beginning of the winter, you know. And it is about picking the right cave to survive the cold times and rationing the food and picking the right crew and laying down the law when you have to, you know. Leaders when we need them, and we need elders to keep the traditions, and we need to respect this. We're being reminded of that. Leo, for the Northern Hemisphere anyway, hot fun in the summertime, plenty of food to eat. The reason why we follow these leaders is because they shine, they radiate, and I spoke about that some before. The essence of the true king or the true queen, the one whose horse we would follow into battle because their horse is first in line. And the battle is worth fighting for, and I've described this as the battle for self-love, the Leo mysteries. So in some ways, Capricorn culture and that shadow of the light there, well, how can we shade the traditions that would keep us from radiant self-love? Because this is part of the true essence of the Leo mystery schools. And it's not an arrogance, it's a pride. Those are very different things. It's not a cockiness, it's a confidence. It's radiating light. It's a very important eclipse because it is the last Leo Aquarius eclipse, right? So the nodes have been Leo Aquarius and they've since shifted Cancer Capricorn. Well, we had a Cancer solar eclipse in 2018 with the nodes in Leo Aquarius foretelling the shift to come. And now we have a Leo eclipse reminding us of where we come from. The study of the nodes is so beautiful because they retrograde through the zodiac. So we're usually talking about, well, Virgo becomes Leo Leo becomes Virgo, right? So Leo, we're reminded of our true creative gifts, and then Virgo, we need to polish that stone and practice, right? But what about Virgo becoming Leo? Because that's what happens with the nodes, which on an 18.5 year are also showing us an advanced vision of the precession of the equinoxes, or the great year of 26,000 years, and the movement through the astrological ages, right? We're moving into the age of Aquarius. We'll see when the North Node is in Aquarius, but also the coming Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, which we'll speak much more about in later transmissions of this presentation, and that Jupiter-Saturn first degree of Aquarius, where the sun is at this Leo total lunar eclipse on January 20th, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, very close in that same degree, will be December 21st, Sun in Capricorn, right? 2020. And it's one of the signals of the dawning of the age of Aquarius, but it's not completely the gateway. So I'm going further than I wish to right now. But very importantly, on like a more local level in time, this Leo total lunar eclipse will ask us to review what the last year and a half were about. I feel like it was like mid-May of 2017 that the nodes first moved from Pisces South Node to Aquarius South Node, and from Virgo North Node to Leo North Node. And now we're bringing the Leo energy to Cancer, right? Which we think of as reversed through or retrograde through the zodiacal order. We're bringing the Aquarian energy to Capricorn. Oftentimes, Capricorn is the traditions that Aquarius needs to have a revolution to get away from so that change can happen. But what is it to bring Aquarius in that revolution back to the traditions? See? And that's innovation, right? Where we see how important it is and see how beautiful it can be if we're in a true relationship, a nurturing energy. Cancer, with the technological revolutions, among other revolutions, we can bring that into the roots of the world tree and into the organic structure. But we need our own personal radiance to do this, right? So when I say leaders, when we need them, if we have the leaders when we don't need them thing, that radiant bright light, well, people just want to do what we do because we're living our truth. We don't have to lay down the law. People remember the true, in a sense, higher royal law. There's Numos law of man and Themis law of spirit. And in a way, Leo, especially when informed through Virgo by Libra, remembers this beauty of the round table and the importance of radiance of self-light. I mean, so I said all this in a short phrase before. When we come full of ourselves, and I don't mean arrogant, I mean knowing who you are, knowing at least through your intentions, what you're here to do and why, giving your light, we can come to these eclipses in a ceremonial way and be that queen, be that king, be that radiant lion being, and fearless, and give back, you see. All right, so last Leo Aquarius eclipse until 2026. So really look at this idea of royalty and revolutionary. I highly recommend you go into this last year and a half. Whether you're hearing this presentation before the January 20th, 2019 total lunar eclipse or not, like, it is time for some review. How can we know where we're going unless we know where we're coming from? As far as the nodes are concerned, which carry the great meeting places for the marriage of soul and spirit, moon and sun by total solar eclipse or total lunar eclipse or partial, with Earth in the midst. The nodes are going, and it'll be a year and a half to Sagittarius and Gemini. They're coming from a year and a half's time in Leo Aquarius. So I'll speak North Node, South Node. Coming from Leo Aquarius, passing through the presence of our time, Cancer, Capricorn, to arrive Gemini, Sagittarius, and of course it will move on from there. So if you speak the astrological language, just honor that these charts, which are so beautiful in moments in time, they have befores and they have afters. And it's really important, I think, for us to open our cosmology to the truth that the world does not stop spinning or orbiting, and that the sun does not stop moving through space, and the planets don't stop moving. We want to really own these snapshots in time, especially our natal charts. But if we don't also honor where we're coming from and where we are going, then we're missing the point of the study. If we are running into where we are going to avoid the moment now, we are absolutely missing the point of the study and should stop practicing astrology instantly. And that's part of the Be Here Now transmission of 2019. If we are looking to 2020 so that we can better 2019, good. That's a way in. If we are avoiding 2019 because we think it's all about 2020, that's a way out. Do you see that? And so these beautiful eclipses that happen in signs next to the signs that hold the nodes, they will either be a premonition of the nodal energetics to come or a remembrance of where they were. And in either case, this being the latter, they are incredible signposts that remind us of the cyclic nature of time. All right. And time does exist here in this world of matter. And it needs to for us to have our experience of feeling, healing, knowing, and growing. Uranus still square the nodes. I mean, this is 2 weeks after that eclipse. But look at how Mercury is now in on that scene. So for the partial solar eclipse in Capricorn, Mercury was square Mars. And now Mercury square Uranus, Mercury applying to the nodes. You can see, well, if you had paid attention, if I had mentioned before that Uranus was retrograde for the January 5th partial solar eclipse, and now having stationed direct on January 6th, 2019, Uranus direct here, right? And the nodes also, let's go back to that eclipse. I got to push a lot of buttons. Here we go. The nodes 2643, Uranus 2836. So there is that square, and yet it had already happened before this time. You can see here that Mercury is applying to conjoin the south node in the total lunar eclipse chart. That's called an applying aspect, where the Uranus nodal square is a separating aspect. It's been there, done that in some senses. But Uranus will conjoin the south node, having conjoined Pluto, and then we'll move on to square Uranus. And I'll say that this is another remembrance of the times that we've been in a sense they're still open, the great Uranus-Pluto square, revolution and evolution squaring off. There were 7 perfect alignments between these 2 great change agent planets between 2012 and 2015. The cycle's been open for longer than that. And in a way, it's still open, but it's starting to close, and Uranus stationing direct to move out of Aries and into Pluto. Or, I'm sorry, out of Aries and into Taurus. We're good in a sense is moving out of this Uranus-Pluto square. Mercury's reminding us of the importance of that. You know, Arab Spring, Occupy movement. I mean, so much more. And I really encourage you astrologers to make sure you're reviewing this time, not only of this last year and a half, as the nodes will encourage us to do, and this full total lunar eclipse in Leo will encourage us to do with the North Node now in Cancer. But also Mercury's bringing our mind, in our Capricorn mind, our Earth mind, our elder consciousness, and looking at Uranus, who squares the nodes as Uranus was square Capricorn Pluto for so long perfectly, and now still Uranus moving direct says, remember what that was about and why. So there's Mercury at the node, right? I mean, so many powerful alignments in this chart. I don't know if I emphasize this one, so I'll just speak this. Look at how strongly, I must have highlighted this, we'll see. Strongly Mars and Saturn are square at this time. I need to grab, speaking of power, I need to grab a power cord. I'll be right back. I didn't mean for this transmission to go this long, but so be it. I'll be right back, friends. Right. So both with Mars square Saturn, Aries, Capricorn, and Mercury square Uranus, Capricorn, Aries, you can see this, right? Mars, Saturn, 14th degree, Mercury, Uranus, in these kind of like 27 average realm. Pluto right between 21, right? That we're being reminded invisibly, Mars, Saturn. In fact, this right now, see how the sun is 17 degrees from Saturn? That's right around the time when Saturn becomes visible again as a morning star. It was the evening star, the sun crossed, took Saturn under the beams, and Saturn is reborn in the morning side. It's a very powerful time when that planet in its heliacal rise is said traditionally to saturate the chart. Mercury not visible at this time, too close to the light. So Saturn reborn, and Mars, I mean, the only visible planet of the night right now, and very visible at that. We're being reminded of the essence of the Aries, Uranus, Capricorn, Pluto square, and now it's coming in a sense out of the psychic and collective spaces into an individual awareness, into a visible awareness. And look at the Leo total lunar eclipse. You know, the soul of Leo going into the shadow so its light can be born in the new reflection of what Leo is. Love yourself. All right, let's move on in here. Venus square Neptune almost perfectly. Venus conjunct Jupiter almost perfectly. The Venus-Jupiter conjunction square Neptune, January 20th. The Venus-Jupiter perfects on January 22nd. We will look at that chart in another part of this transmission, because at the time they are Anticia Saturn, which is something I'm very excited about. And they're very close to that point here. So we'll speak about what Anticia is in a little bit. This is the time where Jupiter is very close to the Anticia point with Saturn, shadow point. But square Neptune, well, Neptune is, hold on, sextile Saturn, but what I'm showing first is Venus now trine Mars. We saw Venus in Scorpio quincunx Uranus in the solar eclipse chart, and now trine Mars. Okay, and this is the love for the spiritual warrior. Look at Venus, Jupiter. There's so much spirit. There's so much seeking nature. Look at Aries, Mars. There's that power and that force of individuation. The awakening from the dream, right? The tension here, probably Sagittarius and Pisces, that is about what is seeking versus believing, among other things. But it empowers the dream, and we see this encouragement to have the awakening. And again, this is all about the main event. Read the title of the chart, Leo total lunar eclipse, right? Coming into the soul of Leo, that remembrance that you were molded in clay, you're ever moldable in the image of the guides. You yourself are that. You can create. And so we are awakening into our spiritual way by really connecting to the roots of the traditions, but also knowing that we must individuate from false traditions. And part of that is the false tradition that says you are not allowed to love yourself because that is arrogant. All right. There's the Mars square Saturn. And here's this Saturn sextile Neptune. And what an amazing geometry. It really actually brings us into some of the profound, longer, outer planet aspects and geometries of this year, which are Jupiter square Neptune, Saturn sextile Neptune, and I'll be speaking about those in a different part. So full moon is 4 degrees and 5 minutes from Rahu, very close, right? And a different sign, if you honor the tropical zodiac, at a cusp. What are cusps is a wonderful question I'm not going to address here. Besides the truth that this is the last Leo Aquarius eclipse till 2026. So really be there. And it's, again, an opportunity to review. Though it's a north node lunar eclipse, look at where the sun is. It's a time to review this last year and a half and see how we can bring the fruit and compost that fruit of that entire passage of the nodes through Leo Aquarius as compost for the soil to plant these seeds of the Cancer, Capricorn eclipses in the year and a half to come. All right. So here we are with this lunar eclipse within the range at 4 degrees and 5 minutes from the north lunar node, where it could be partial or it could be total. You see that? If a full moon meets within 3 degrees and 45 minutes of a node, it must be total. In this one meeting in this space, that could be partial or could be total. Why is this one total then? Do you know? And this is the answer. Every year when the sun gets close to Black Moon Lilith, and I show true Black Moon Lilith, and that's the one you want to consider for this astronomical reality, the full moons will be super moons. What is a supermoon? In that text, it's an astronomical expression of supermoon that actually beautifully came from an astrologer, and the astronomers have accepted this term now. Okay, so here's a different image of the path of Soul, Moon, in her dance with matter, Earth. Orbits are not circular, they are elliptical. This one, very extremely exaggerated. The Moon-Earth thing is pretty circular, but not. So there are times when Moon is closest to Earth, and therefore largest, brightest, fastest. And when Moon is furthest from Earth, and therefore slowest, smallest. Okay? Any ellipse, an elliptical orbit, there are two foci of gravitational center. And in a circle, the center is the center. In an ellipse, there are two centers. So for the Moon-Earth dance, which is really more of like a binary thing. I mean, the moon is huge compared to Earth as far as moons and planets go, right? The moon by diameter is 3/11 the size of Earth, about a quarter the size of Earth, more, right? Fifth largest moon in our solar system. Think about the size of Earth compared to Uranus or Neptune, right? Saturn, Jupiter. Moon is only smaller than 4 of Jupiter's moons and 1 large moon of Neptune. I mean, that's nuts. All right. Anyway, so there's something going on here. And we think of this model of moon orbiting Earth and Earth orbiting sun. Okay, there's actually this dual dance of moon and Earth about the sun. And because even the Earth-sun thing is not completely sun-centered, it's not a circle, right? It's more of a dynamic choreography than even what I expressed. But anyway, the two centers, although they are not centers, of the Moon-Earth relationship, the two foci, one is within Earth's bounds, and the other one is just a dark place in space, a gravitational well, but there's no body there. And it's a place that astrologers, for some interesting reason, have come to describe as Black Moon Lilith. And there's a dark moon Lilith, which is a different thing. And there's an asteroid Lilith, which is a different thing. But I'm talking about the Black Moon Lilith, okay, which is the foci, besides the one that's in Earth, of the Moon-Earth dance. Got it? All right. When we on Earth look through that point of space, we find the lunar apogee, which is where Moon is furthest from Earth. Now, you've heard me already describe part of my own cosmology, where sun is spirit and moon is soul and Earth is matter. And I will say that here at the apogee, when moon is there, as it is every month, and it is smallest, that it is the soul that's a little bit more hesitant to come into matter. And you can find that in charts when moon is conjoined Black Moon Lilith. When moon is opposite Black Moon Lilith, like shown here in this diagram created with the help of the most amazing Anna Zaharia. And should you choose to use this diagram, in fact, I'll close my camera now so you can take a screenshot if you would like. Should you choose to reuse this diagram, please leave our logo, Gemini Brett, Scorpio Anna, in the bottom right there, arts of the chart. Please retain our logo if you use that image in your presentations or whatever it may be, okay? So the apogee is where soul is further from matter. We're more connected to the all, because it is here in matter where we are asked by moon, the art of forgetting, to forget that we are the all, so we can have an individuated experience, a soulful experience, moon. All right, when moon is close to Earth, there's an urgency to come in and to embody and really do the Earth game. All right. suggestions for my own contemplations of the cosmology of Earth, Moon, and Sun, and they seem to speak in consultation so far, but I'm still checking that out. I'm not telling you this is the only way. There are many ways to pet the cosmic cat, but I will tell you that's where I'm coming from right now, and it actually kind of complies with these mythological ideas of Lilith, which is a crazy patriarchal thing in some senses. You may know the tale. That didn't come around till the 8th century, by the way, and it's a really difficult text that includes such hits as gold must be hammered and children must be beaten. So why would we even read any other words from that sad transmission, you know? But if you read about Lilith there, the story is that she was co-created along the side of Adam, but that she left the garden. It said she did not want to lie under him, and he did not want to lie under her. And she split. She's like, screw this place. But then there's really difficult, you know, perhaps lashing out at the feminine traditions that were put onto Lilith, mythically speaking, where she really, what's happening is she's being related to an older image of one called Lilitu in the Sumerian tradition, who is a very different story, but these were kind of the specific rank of spirit who were like screech owls of the night that were kind of baby eaters, and that's twisted, right? But I want you to feel into this. Let me just share this. I have the honor of sitting with many who have been through miscarriages, stillbirths, abortions. You know, nobody wrote a book for these things, especially the latter. And it's a deep initiation. I mean, in our times, abortion treated like some surgery, you know. And then when people go through their awakening, if they do, they often look back at that time that they probably had a really hard time with, even in the moment, especially if they're already considering reality. But oftentimes people are looking back, it's like, whoa, that actually was like this huge thing that changed my life that I wasn't even aware of. And, you know, I always in session, well, not always, but usually like drum and ask this person to connect to the spirit of this one who didn't come through, you know, in any of these circumstances. And why I share this is because Lilith was known to be the one who held sway over abortions and stillbirths and miscarriages. That was her domain. She was the one who would keep souls from coming to Earth. Now, you can just say this is some patriarchal demonization of the feminine and the one who chose her own strength not to just like play out this role of being Adam's wife or whatever. I don't think she was made to be Adam's wife. They were made to be a couple, and they were both like, this ain't right, you know? And she split. And it's said that she made this trade so that she wouldn't be forced by the angels and the archons to come back into the garden, that she traded 100 souls a day, 100 souls who she was to help not come to Earth. She would give back in exchange to not be forced back into the garden. And that's when a rib was taken from Adam so that Eve could be created in a whole different trip. Now, is any of this real? What does it mean? What it means for me is an opportunity to open to this feel, because what I have seen is that babies who don't come in often have as much participation with the parents' experience as a soul as do those who are born. And that's extreme, but we know that, you know, an aborted child or a stillborn child can have so much effect on the life of the parent and those around them, right? And in the abortion, like, it's such an isolating event for a woman. There's no book written, even if they have a really conscious and participating partner, you know, and the father, it is such an isolating event. And the awakening experience itself is an isolation. And sometimes it is our isolation that actually encourages the awakening, right? And oftentimes it actually is an abortion that will first stimulate a spiritual awakening for a woman and for a man. It's a very difficult experience for a man as well, if they choose to go there and face it, yeah? Isn't it a difficult experience for this child who was preparing, you know, and in the womb? I mean, think of a stillbirth for this child who was ready to come to Earth. Or were they? Or was this part of the divine plan? Was it part of that soul's choice? Did my mom name me or did I name me? Did my mom, you know, or even when a baby is C-sectioned or induced, you know, is the doctor choosing that time or is the baby? These are all contemplations I have, and I think we as astrologers need to have, and I don't have answers, you know. But what I will say is that there is a genius of the soul who chooses not to come all the way in to the earth game, but to shape it from very close by. And I see that in the power of the Black Moon Lilith. And I see this as why it took on that strange name, this gravitational well of moon, soul, and earth matter in space that directs the earthly gaze to the moon's apogee, where soul is furthest away from matter and therefore smallest and slowest. Now, what about the opposite side? That those, like in the new diamond astrology tradition coming out of Germany and Holland, called Priapus, where moon is closest to earth. So you can think of earth as this prison planet, as too many conspiracists do, or you can think of it as the amazing place of the garden here, you know? Do you want to be here? What part of you does? What part of you doesn't? Well, this total lunar eclipse is a time where moon is very close to earth. Because again, when the sun, and this happens every year, is close to the true Black Moon Lilith, which points the earthly gaze to the lunar apogee, okay? When the sun's there, that means the full moons in the opposite side of the zodiac are going to be opposite the apogee at the perigee, where moon is closest to the earth. And these we've come to call supermoons. And I love this term for the apogee moon, the micromoon. And they're literally, look, 30% bigger, the perigee moon, the supermoon. Sorry, 30% brighter, 14% bigger. That's huge. And since the average size of the moon is just the right size to the earthly eyes to occult perfectly the solar disk, which is about a ½ degree of arc in our sky, that means the micromoon is not large enough to occult the entire solar disk. So if you have a meeting of a new moon close enough to the nodes, but the moon is small, you get the ring of fire, the annular eclipse, which we will have on December 25th, 2019. If the moon is larger, closer to Earth, and therefore, to our point of view, larger than the solar disk, you are much more likely to have a total solar eclipse, because you've got a larger thing to occult the light, and it is going to typically last for longer, even though the moon, because close to Earth, is moving faster at that time. It's larger, and so will occult the solar disk more. It's a really cool, a lot of variables in these equations astronomically of eclipse timings, and therefore essences astrologically of eclipse timings. So I'm not into this stuff just because I'm a nerd. Right? And I'm not teaching the astronomy of astrology to so many, including you right now, because I'm just a nerd. It's partially because of that, but I'm a nerd because I'm here to remind us of the importance of the nature happenings to help us understand what they mean on a soul level, which is astrology. All right. So sun is close to Lilith now. Lilith is currently true Lilith in the sign of Aquarius. She moves around. The average Lilith is really interesting. The mean Black Moon Lilith moves 40 degrees or a sign and a third every year. The true Black Moon Lilith is much more dynamic. Look at her dance. It's an incredible thing. And she's been in like Capricorn Aquarius for some time. You probably know, if you've been following charts, I've become very interested in Black Moon Lilith. At first in my astrological training, it's like, nothing's there. Why would I care? It's like, wait a second. She points us to the apogee. And I can see this. I've learned to see this with the moon by just measuring the moon with my thumb at arm's length, or pinky usually. Like, is the moon big right now or small, right? It's a fascinating thing. You can learn to see apogees and perigees, not just with full moons, but when the sun is at Lilith, that means the full moons will be these large moons, these bright moons, these close moons, these fast moons, these super moons. And the dates of the 2 super moons of 2019, Moon Day, January 21st, that's the day after the total lunar eclipse. And this is why that lunar eclipse is total, despite the truth that it's far enough from the nodes that it's in the maybe partial, maybe total zone. It's total because it's close and big All right. Tuesday, February 19th, the full moon in the sign of Virgo, right? Sun in Pisces will be our second super moon of the year. And then the super new moon on Saturday, September 28th, which is when Sun, wait a second, how does that one work? Right, where Sun is opposite Lilith, because that means the new moon is opposite Lilith, and opposite Lilith is the perigee, and that's where moon is biggest. All right, cool. Fun, you know, so these are actually different ways to tune into maybe a strength of a lunation cycle. How big is the moon? But I'll say it's not necessarily so much strength, it's more like ratio. Right? Like a small moon lunation like we're in right now, it's big on sun, it's big on spirit. A big moon lunation like the one that will begin in September is big on moon, it's big on soul. So it's really important for us to have a cosmology. And again, I'm not suggesting you have mine, though I think it's very much reflected in our astrological symbolism, where we use circle for sun and crescent for moon and cross for earth inside the circle, which we call spirit, and crescent soul, and cross matter. It is that teaching where somebody just said that to me and then turned the page that forced me to begin to study with the compass and the square. And it's confirmed not only that language, but what it means on an energetic and soul level. And it's where I typically always take clients first in session. And if you like the sound of that cosmology, book a session. This is what I do. It's how I eat, you know. Morethan.astrology.com is where you can find me. I have to throw some plugs in here when we're doing scores of hours of free stuff. You know? So again, morethan.astrology.com. You can also find a donate button there if you feel like giving a little something back for what you are receiving here. And I hope you are receiving something here. And if you feel others will, please like this video, because algorithmically it helps it get around. And you could actually just share it, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube later on. Please share it around. Please leave a comment. They warm my soul. All right, here are some from NASA, although I found this at moonblink.info. Some of the parameters for this total lunar eclipse. You can see where the moon is behind the shadow of the earth and stuff. The deal is, the moon is bigger in our sky for a supermoon eclipse, but the earth, because it is closer to the moon and it's further from the projector, it's casting a larger shadow onto the moon. Maybe that makes sense, maybe not. In the white zone down here, where you see all of the Americas, and in the gray, like a bunch of Europe and Africa, right? That's where this lunar eclipse is visible. And you can see that I think it's around the kind of Jamaica, Puerto Rico zone where it's like maxed out. So again, I mentioned this before, but you might have joined since then. Bill Meridian's The Predictive Power of Eclipse Paths is an amazing book. The works of his teachers are reproduced there. Highly recommended. And you can find at the cosmicintelligenceagency.com some of the great teachings of Bill Meridian in a quicker kind of webinar format. All right, so I put the star here in the Bay Area because this, again, all this information I presented very quickly to the San Francisco Astrological Society. And just to share that, here's the chart for San Anselmo, California, where I currently sit. And you can see that the moon in the 11th house there on the left is above the horizon, the horizontal line of the chart. In other words, we get to see this thing, because unlike a solar eclipse where, because the thing that is blocking the projector, the sun, is very small, it only shows a very small pinpoint kind of shadow on the screen, which in that case is the earth. For a lunar eclipse, anywhere where the full moon is visible, meaning it's above the horizon and weather allows, everywhere sees it. The lunar eclipse, the blood moon, speaking to the blood that runs through the human's veins, is such a beautiful thing because it connects us to like half the world and more. Because some people will just see the eclipse form as the moon sets. Some people will see it ending as the moon rises, right on those tail ends that's actually described by these kind of gray zones on either side of the chart. The eclipse moves west to east, by the way, and it's a very important thing. It's a tale for another time. Or you can watch that eclipse astronomy video that I put up on YouTube last year. this is an amazing thing that is so global, that connects so many of us. You know, it's rare to see a total solar eclipse because they happen not that infrequently, but to be in the place where they go down, you have to put some work in. For the lunar eclipse, you know, we'll see pictures from all of these places on Earth. We'll see pictures from Africa and the UK and Spain. You know, we'll see pictures from Alaska as much as we see them from Brazil or whatever. So it's really cool. And, you know, again, like here we have a Aquarius sun and the Leo moon, and that art of Leo and that Aquarius technology is one of the beautiful things about this technology that does serve the genius of the earth and the heart shown here by the earth wisdom, south node in Capricorn, and nurturing wisdom of family and culture and larger families, tribe, Cancer, North Node. There is a connection here because when we see these eclipses from all over the world, we remember that we are global. We remember that our family includes everyone. And we get to see how people's individual, in places, individual, local experiences of this global phenomena are all different. We're reminded to think globally and act locally in a sense, and we're reminded maybe more importantly of the essence of the individuated soul here in matter, moon, earth, to feed the growth of spirit. All right. And so if you are here in the Bay Area, again, I'll be hosting a eclipse chat meditation ceremony here in San Anselmo, California, in Marin, and join me. Reach out to me. You can find me at morethanastrology.com. I can link you to my Facebook where you could send a message, or more importantly, my email, because if we're not friends on Facebook, that might get suppressed into that weird, inbox. It will be less like this for me. I will say, and I don't know, well, yeah, I won't say because I don't know if it's open invite. But more importantly, get out and get with people, Cancer, and bring your own light, Leo, to tap into the amazing spiritual technology, Aquarius, that opens the wisdom of the earth in our culture, Capricorn. Celebrate this eclipse, be there. All right. So one of the most amazing things about the 2019 eclipses, again, is that we have each type of solar eclipse. And if we get into those eclipse limits tables, you can see why. And this is why I spent so much time teaching like the size of the moon. I really encourage you to contemplate that and how that means to your cosmology. How can you possibly consider what an eclipse might mean astrologically if you don't have a feeling of what Earth, moon, and sun mean? And for me, the transmissions of what sun and moon are just, that I see in most astrology books, they are just way too discreet. And, the essence of what Hermes says in the tablets, that the sun is the father and the moon, the mother, and the wind hath carried it in its belly, and the earth its nurse. Let me tell you that he's not talking about somebody's father and somebody's mother. He's talking about much, much more. She's talking about much, much more there. This isn't about like the gender. And it also is, and there's no words for it, but the compass and the square will teach you if you take that journey. And if you're interested in that, reach out to me for mentorship, because all my students, astrology students, start with sacred geometry and start with musical harmony and start with number magic, because those are the gateways, and start with astronomy because those are the gateways to a true, direct, intimate relationship with astrology. So I don't take too many students on because my methods are weird, but we might align. And if you think so, reach out, all right? morethanastrology.com. So it's an amazing thing that if you do a calendar Gregorian trip, that we have partial, total, and annular solar eclipses this year. And a total and a partial lunar eclipse, right? There's the two kinds of lunar eclipses. We get the whole thing, right? And I'm not going to speak about the astrology of the other eclipses so much right now. I'm sure I will later in the summer. I know that in June, around the solstice, I'll be working in Maine. It hasn't been fully finalized yet, but it will soon. And we're going to have a star camp, I think, of 3 days and an eclipse meditation and speak about eclipse charts. I'll probably be doing the same thing here in Bay Area, California, somewhere under dark skies in July of 2019. I know I'm working in Minnesota around May 18th, 2019, Minneapolis, where we'll do talk about soul and the Emerald Tablets of Hermes, and then have a full moon ceremony, not an eclipse. And I'm working at the Great Lakes Astrological Convention, GLAC, at the end of June, beginning of July 2019, where we will certainly be speaking about, though my shares in other realms about superpowers of the chart, we'll certainly be speaking about the total solar eclipse of July 2nd, 2019. And there's a chance that my brother Gary Caton and I will do a bit of a star camp in Michigan shortly after that event in early July. So stay tuned. morethan.astrology.com/events if any of that stuff interests you. Also, Athens, Greece, first weekend of September for the first annual Hellenistic Astrology Conference, courtesy Angela Tiki. Thank you. And it sounds like we might have an opportunity for me to lead a private stargazing in the Poseidon Temple after hours. We'll look into that. All right. Cancer total solar eclipse. What I'm going to do here is just show these charts and not really get into it. This is July 2nd, 2019. I mean, I'll say that, it's Cancer. It's the second Cancer solar eclipse because with the node still in Leo Aquarius last year, we had a Cancer solar eclipse. It's the last of the 3 of the triple eclipse in the Northern Hemisphere summer of 2018. I mean, the alignments of this eclipse, of course, they are always amazing. The alignment's opposite Saturn, though it's not too strong, just as this partial solar eclipse January 5th, 2019 was with Saturn. So very important things, the way that Pluto comes into this. And so I said I wasn't going to say too much. This is where that eclipse can be seen. Chile, where it's winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, but in Chile and in these southern realms of Argentina, this one gets very close to Buenos Aires, but in Chile, and I'm sad to not be going, I was kind of planning on it, but I had the opportunity to speak at GLAC, and it'd just be too hard for me to fly down there in one day, I think. But there's a place where this is seen in Chile where it only rains 2 days a year. It stays pretty warm. And I highly recommend, as I've been saying earlier with Jupiter and Sagittarius, and travel to sacred places and Cancer North Node community. This could be an amazing thing to go to, especially if you recently turned 18 or will 18, 36, 54, 72, 90, because the 18s, really 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours are the breath or the rhythm of a Saros cycle, a family of eclipses. Well, I can't do too much of that today. I will say it's very important this year. And one of the reasons that's inspiring a lot of like the deep kind of eclipse meditations and eclipse talks and spreading of eclipse awareness that I'm called to present this year. All right, so here's the Capricorn partial lunar eclipse. That's the full moon of the Cancer total solar eclipse, right? Very close to Pluto now. The sun has passed its opposition to Pluto. The moon's past Pluto between the 2 times. Venus opposite Saturn. Venus trine Neptune, and quincunx Jupiter, and Mars square Uranus. And there's so much to say, of course. I'll probably make videos later on in the year closer to those times if time allows. July 16th, 2019. And the partial lunar eclipse, not visible where I live in the States. You can see it grayed out here. But I think it's around the time that I'll be doing a star camp here in Northern California. We'll see. The Capricorn annular solar eclipse, Christmas Day, right with Jupiter, who in November will ingress Capricorn, as I showed before, close enough to the South Node to be total, but the moon at a kind of average size, which we can tell why, because moon here squares Lilith. too small to occult the entire solar disk, at least when they're that far from the nodes. And so we get the ring of fire, the annular solar eclipse. This is where it can be seen in its full annularity. And we move along. Moonblink.info/eclipse/search, one of my favorite places online to play, because what we see here is not only the eclipse dates on the left, the types in the middle, other things like the length on the right and more, is that we see this SS there towards the middle, that's solar series, okay? These families of eclipses. And all right, so we're going to end here. It's going to get a little heavy, so let me hold on. Like, just ask you to ground in and really honor the truth that we are currently in a Capricorn lunation, asking us to focus on our Earth. And so a cup of tea for us here. Okay. And to understand the power of the essence of an occultation, of light coming from shadow, and the quest of the dragons, and the opportunity that an eclipse brings to dive into our shadow so that we can rebirth the light. This happens in hours, this happens for a month, this happens for 3 months, this happens for 6 months, this happens for years, and it also happens through Saros series in an 18-year, 11-day, and 8-hour patterning, 18 years, and through the nodes, 18 and a half years, and through the metonic cycle, 19 years, and that's a long trip, and I'll be speaking about this. I'll show you a slide soon in case you're in the Bay. But what I want to call your attention here to is that Saros cycle 127, 139, and 132, which describe the July 2nd total solar, July 16th partial lunar, and December 25th annular solar eclipses of the year of 2019, are the next beat in the rhythm of eclipse families that last were heard in the year of 2001. So you know the image that comes next. This changed everything. This can still change everything. This got dark, very dark. Think about what has happened since then. Think about how you are bringing light more and more since then. Think about how collectively we can harness a greater light. Some of it might be the truth that some truth around this strange thing will be revealed. That's hard to have faith in for the collective, for the public level. There's reasons why that needs to happen. There's reasons why perhaps that doesn't need to happen. I don't want to go down that line, but I will say it's very interesting that it seems that a grand jury to consider some of the evidence presented by the architects and engineers for 9/11 truth, that a grand jury will happen in the year of 2019. I imagine it will happen, by the way, after July 2nd, after the total solar eclipse comes around. That is the next beat in the rhythm of a family astronomically described as Saros cycle 127 that was last heard on June 21st, 2001. The 9/11 attacks, in which we were told caused by 19 hijackers, 19, a very interesting eclipse number, by the way, happened obviously on September 11th, 2001, with the sun pretty close to the moon's northern bending, about halfway between the eclipse cycles of that year, the solar eclipse of June 21st and December 14th, total and annular. And you can see total and annular of 2019, July 2nd and December 25th. Okay. So in 2001, in a sense, if you want to consider 9/11, 2001 as a nativity, then its prenatal eclipse chart, which is such a powerful and important astrological contemplation, individually, collectively, its prenatal eclipse chart was a total solar eclipse chart on the June solstice, the power point of the tropical zodiac, which is all about the directions, and the 0 degree Cancer, late Gemini, June solstice point of the zodiac is due north of the center of Earth. Not just when the sun is at solstice, at all times. And the genius of the tropical zodiac is that it is a shamanic directional function, system, mechanism. All right. So I could speak about this forever. I will. I'm going to do that probably more intimately in these eclipse focus groups, one in Maine in June, one in the Bay Area in July, and I'll be presenting about it as time goes on. I'm very interested to see what happens with this, obviously, and not surprised that this is coming around in the Saros year of the eclipse family, 2001. May it bear fruit. Now, 2020 eclipses, and I should be here now and be here in 2019, but we will look at 2020 in this regard as well, because another type of eclipse happening simply because it is a reflection periodically through timing of moon and sun is the 19 years, which is called the Metonic, named after a Greek meton, though we knew about it well before, as evidenced in Stonehenge and places all over the world, including the Americas, like Chimney Rock in Colorado and Newark Earthworks in Ohio, and more and more. Anyway, so look at the dates here. Here we see in 2019, the Saros repetition, the family of eclipses repetition of 2001, a beautiful, powerful study why there are eclipse families. 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours on average, the rhythm of an eclipse beat. But the Metonic cycle just speaks of moon and sun. Look at your 19th solar return chart, the chart on your 19th birthday, and you'll see that the moon is very close to its original position. We have the moon return by sign every 27.3 days. We have this moon return by phase, because that's moon sun, every 29.53 days. We have the moon return by sign and phase every 19 years. Okay, so new moon will have another new moon 19 years later. A new moon, if it's a solar eclipse, we can have a solar eclipse 19 years later. We don't necessarily have a solar eclipse 19 years later, though it will certainly be a new moon 19 years later, because the nodes move on 18.6-year cycles, not 19, and therefore these Metonic repetitions of eclipse breaths on the same dates, different families, but same calendar dates, same zodiacal degrees, they only happen in these strings that I call Metonic strings, 4 or 5 of those. Let me say that you can go to OPA, Organization for Professional Astrology. Go to OPA, O-P-A, astrology.org, O-R-G, and you will find a link for articles. And one of the top articles is my Eclipse Cycles article called The Death of the King. And if you want, you can read a lot about eclipse cycles there. Not as much as I'd like to share, and I do in personal presentations and in sessions where I love taking people into their prenatal eclipse, etc. Anyway, you'll see that in 2019, we have the Saros repetitions of the 2001 eclipses that came before the 9/11 attacks and after, right? And the invasion of Iraq, and much more was going down then in December of 2001. And that in 2020, we have the date repetitions. Okay. So first, just understand that we are being called in so many ways into the memories, and I've shared this from like way archaic, like, Atlantis is a strange word I invoked and waved my crystal around. Well, let me just say here, I'll wave this earth around and talk about right now. How has your life changed since 2001? What was 2000? What was 2001? What was 2012 is also a very important consideration. It's a time for us to understand that there are twin flowers available to sprout from the dark soil of the Twin Towers if we are willing to face why this happened on a collective soul level. And if we are willing to ask, did this happen in the way that we are being told it did? It's not, I used to think, trying to shake people awake. I used to think it was necessary for people to have a spiritual awakening the way that I did, which in maybe true scorpionic fashion was pretty dark and in these conspiracy rabbit holes, and coming out of them and learning how to go there with light now has been so much of my training that is an ongoing process. And I don't share about this kind of thing too much. But that this is sketchy. And this might not happen for the collective. It would be very cool for some truths to be revealed. It would bring so much beauty of the truth of South Node, Capricorn with Pluto, with Saturn, these great 2020 alignments. And then we see another correlation through the eclipses, through the shadow, through the dragon, through the power of matter, soul, and spirit. May it be so collectively. Must it be so for you? It is for me. I'll be speaking about these themes a bit at the National Council for Geocosmic Research San Francisco Division on Saturday, January 19th, 2019, 1 to 3 p.m. Fort Mason Building in San Francisco. So if you're hearing this before, if you're in the Bay or you have friends in the Bay, come or send them. I will say, however, this is happening sadly during the Women's March, and that might be where you want to be. So I'll be here and I'll be speaking about these eclipse cycles and the power of them. And as I mentioned before, stay tuned at morethanastrology.com. You'll find an events page. There will be like specific star camps this summer and around the country and the world that are devoted to anchoring in collectively to a healing light of the eclipse essence of this year and the year to come for all years. And so in the next part of this long transmission, Part 9 and Part 8 was like a marathon here. Thank you for your presence and your patience and your participation energetically, for we are all of the one crystal. My prayer when I begin these things is, may the wisdom of these beautiful beings speak through me today, and I hope you have heard yourself reflected in my weird words. I'll say the prayer when the magic bracelet comes off, and I'm ready to do that. It's not quite yet. We'll look at one more thing together. But yeah, thank you for participating. Again, if you want to give a little something back for what you're receiving here, if you are in a space to do so, no guilt. If not, none of that, right? We're working together here. It's beautiful. One easy, free thing you can do to help me out is like this video. Literally, just like the video. Share it around, It's huge. Leave a comment. It's such a encouragement, an inspiring force, In doing so, you will have to reveal that you like or at least look at astrology. Ooh, this is an important thing. South Node, Capricorn, North Node, Cancer. Let's not let the strange lockdown inquisition traditions of our skeptic scientific reality and church-based religious superstition keep us from opening to the higher consciousness of reality, friends. Astrology is real, and we must publicly love this if we want to help in this way assist the shift of the world. And you'll hear me say in future parts of this 2019 astrology transmission that this is a time to reclaim the woo. Huge. And you'll see this crystal probably from me a lot this year. Good. All right. The sun on the cross. And I think we've had enough today, but very importantly, we're going to look at how not only was this total solar eclipse of 2001, this prenatal solar eclipse for the 9/11 attacks, so powerful for that year and for this year of 2019 and the year to come of 2020, but it was one of the most powerful events in the entire 26,000 year cycle of the great year. So we've spoken about nodes to help us journey with moon and sun and earth in this part 8. And in part 9 of these 2019 astrology transmissions, we will head to the marriage of the cross of matter and the circle of spirit, the way that the earth and the sun relate, which is the poetic breath of nature, known to you, though perhaps you don't know this is why, as the tropical zodiac. Thank you for drinking astrology with me today. Your participation and allowance for me to have a venue to transmit what I feel about the astrological essence this year helps me remind myself and tune my intentions to the way that I choose to participate with the energy so that I can actively co-create and give the gift of my own personal soul's visions and dreams to the collective weaving of a better future. Thank you for being one of these, dare I say, light workers. All right, when the magic bracelet comes off so I can become human again, my prayer is, may this have confirmed what you have always known. May it have opened new windows of contemplation, practice, and play. And in true Gemini fashion, may it have brought more questions than answers. See ya in space. Friends, this is your friendly astrology Gemini Brett signing off.